All right, welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. Now it's time for us to take a look at what the front pages of the national dailies are actually saying. Now we'll start with Daily Trust newspaper, and we have the lead story here that says, "Don't invade Niger. Prominent Nigerians tell Tinubu." We have writers here that says, "Ask ECOWAS to consider diplomacy sanctions. Fear in North over max influx of refugees. Military action, last option," says DHQ. And Abdusalami Sultan meets coup leaders as Tinubu's emissaries. Now, you can find details of that story on page 4. And there's a pictorial of the president, the Sultan of Sokoto, and General Abdusalami Abubakar shortly before they left for Niger Republic, and also during the meeting with Niger Republic's coup leader, General Abdurrahman Chiani, represented at the meeting by General Barmou and other top brass in Niamey. Now, more stories. How Ganduje emerged APC chairman. Details on page 12. We have Disco's revenue dip as foreign companies fail to pay $16.11 million power debt in first quarter. We also have troops nab dismissed soldier supplying Plateau militia's arms. Tinubu's wife visits Buhari in Daura. And on page 3, we have diphtheria kills 122 children in 7 months, says UNICEF. Court demands or remands husband for attempting to cut wife's breasts. Details can be found on page 21. And NLC threatens another strike over federal government's contempt charges. These are some of the stories you can find on Daily Trust newspaper. Now we also have the Punch newspaper up next. Subsidy protests, federal government, labor talks collapse, and NLC begins strike August 14. While some newspaper actually says they threaten, the Punch is saying that they will begin the strike on August 14. Why Labour made a U-turn on agreement reached with Tinubu on subsidy removal. Another writer here says, "Man, LCCI demand more palliatives from federal government. NLC gives reason for ending protests." And we also have PDP, Labour Party, mock APC as NEC ratifies Ganduje party chair. We also have more stories at the top there. Niger, Tinubu woos Libya, Algeria against junta. We also have federal government begins no work, no pay for striking doctors. New public service rules may force out 512 directors. At the bottom of the page, father of siblings killed by collapsed hotel fence demands justice. Delta governor indicts Lagos hospital over doctor's death in elevator. And NNPCL, NIPCO begin deployment of auto gas stations. These are some of the stories on the Punch newspaper. Now, we also have more papers here. We'll take a look at the Nation newspaper. And the Nation newspaper talks about, from the top there, NSA probes another vessel held with stolen crude. Suspected military boat escorting ship. Now, we also have oil, gas, freeze trade zones attract $16 billion investment. Below the name mast there, Labour threatens strike over contempt charge against Ajero. Tinubu sends Abdusalami Sultan to warn Niger junta. We also have Ganduje pledges to reform. The lead story here says Ganduje pledges reform, fairness to reposition APC. Former Governor Senator Bashiru step in. Tinubu, let's fulfill our promises. NWC gets flats to fill 6 vacant posts. And on the footnotes there, we have Pencom's assets hit 16 trillion naira, Delta to buy electric buses. All right, now up next is the Guardian newspaper. Let's see what the Guardian is actually saying. We have the lead story here that talks about Nigeria's political dynasties wax stronger as poverty deepens. It's a big story. You can find that on pages 4 and 5. And there is a pictorial and also an infographic there of which generation wields the most power and influence in Nigeria. And if you want to read more on that, just take a look at pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian newspaper. We also have manufacturers at the top there. Manufacturers endangered as more Nigerians switch to cheaper brands. We also have Forex challenges. High OPEX force GSK's exit from Nigeria. Biden calls for immediate release of Bazoum, orders officials out of Niger. Why average Nigerians can't afford new vehicles, and the coup in Niger, military option unrealistic. And these are some of the stories that you can find on the Guardian newspaper. Now, let's take a look at the Leadership newspaper, Friday Leadership. APC, NEC gives Ganduje power to fill other NWC positions. We also have the lead story here on Tinubu's ministers in graphic map. We have on the infographic on their profession, their gender, their age, and what region they're from. You can read up more on that on page 4. We also have withdraw court summons of face strike. NLC tells federal government. 48 billion naira fraud. Kano Anti-Graft Commission arrests father and son. Bandits abduct Catholic priest seminarian in Niger. Union protest. Fraud allegations against NUPRC boss baseless, frivolous. And we also have experts predict $26 billion diaspora remittances as mass immigration swells. We have a Navy boat escorting vessel with stolen crude intercepted in Niger, in Delta State, and FAN bans taxi operators at Abuja Airport over infighting. Now, these are some of the stories on Leadership Friday. All right, let's take a look at this day newspaper. From the top there, we have talks about Niger crisis, which every paper seems to have carried. We also have pension assets hit 16.76 trillion naira, recorded 1.7 trillion naira growth in first quarter 2023, says Pancom. Below the name mass there, Lagos reaffirms commitment to fostering enabling environment for business. We also have at Ganduje's coronation, Tinubu says his election most credible. We also have riders on that story, which is also the big story that says declares his policies are for Nigerians, not to punish them. APC NEC ratifies Ganduje Bashiru as National Chair Secretary. Rubbishes EU report, empowers NWC to fill other vacancies. New chair promises strict adherence to internal democracy. Ruling party's national legal advisor resigns amid graft charge. And these are some of the stories on this day newspaper. All right, so let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Nigerian Tribune. We have from the top there, many injured, properties destroyed as thugs attack APC members in Ekiti. Details on page 23. Nominations open for 2023 Obafemi Awolowo Leadership Prize. We also have the lead story here talking about the waiting game in the APC as Ganduje Bashiru emerged national chairman. PDP mocks party over Ganduje's appointment. Kyari, Edu, Lukman's positions up for grabs. On page 12 here, my administration didn't receive 200 billion naira from UBEC, says Okowa. Oyo workers continue secretariat blockade. Agitation unfair. Don't get violent. Government cautions. We also have reps to revisit 11.3 trillion naira allegedly spent on turnaround maintenance. We also have security agents intercept ship with suspected stolen crude in Delta. These are some of the stories on Tribune newspaper. Now we have Blueprint here. The lead story still talks about the Ganduje being national chairman of the APC. We also have pump price of petrol to increase as crude oil surges. A lot of Nigerians will definitely not find this, funny. DMO lists 130 billion to cook, billion naira to cook to boost capital market. Court jails man for impersonating election tribunal secretary in Niger. We also have more stories. UBA partners Med Plus or Ricky Eye Fitness to enhance customer experience. We also have NLC to federal government vacate all litigations or risk total shutdown from August 14. Troops neutralize 36 terrorists, arrest 137 and rescue 140 hostages. And these are some of the stories that we can take on Blueprint. All right, we also have, while we're done with reading out the stories on the front page, we also have our guests in the studio in the person of Suleiman. He is the chairman editorial board
That's all right.
of Daily Trust, yes, and also the deputy editor-in-chief joining us to review the headlines of the papers this morning. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for
Suleiman. Yeah. All right, so let's start with the story that's obviously on the front page of every newspaper and the lead story on Daily Trust newspaper, which is the Niger crisis and the coup, and the fact that the president has actually sent delegations to Niger to speak with leaders and also to neighboring Algeria and other countries. We also have people asking the ECOWAS to consider diplomacy and sanctions instead of going in on a harsh note. What is your thoughts on the whole coup, the whole crisis, the whole saga, and what the ECOWAS has actually decided to do at this point?
Well, I think unfortunately the government's the statement by the ECOWAS, that they were given the new junta an ultimatum was rather too harsh and was probably influenced by Nigeria's government, because the president Tinubu is also the chairman of the heads of government, which is the main policy and as well as working body within ECOWAS. So maybe I think there's that hastiness, there's that attitude to act first before thinking, that has now been taken to that international level. Otherwise, anyone who knows what Nigeria is to Nigeria, you will not be so quick to speak that way, because Niger happens to be not just our next door neighbor, because we have other next door neighbors, Chad, Benin Republic, and others. But probably the closest, the country that Nigeria has the closest ties to, Nigerian presidents and heads of state, whether military or civilian, have tended to see themselves like younger brothers or sisters to Nigeria's leaders over the past. It has always been like that. So to just rush and say you are giving a military ultimatum, you are just displaying your hand too quickly without knowing what cards your opponent has, and now it becomes increasingly clear to the government and to ECOWAS itself how complex this coup is. It's not a simple issue of some drunken soldiers taking over government. It's rather much more complex than that.
We also had Mali and Burkina Faso. When the address was actually, sent, they warned against any military invasion, saying they would see it as an act of war. And we also saw the delegation that was actually sent to Niger. The leader of the coup, that's General Abdurrahman Chiani, was absent. Instead, there was a representative. What does this actually say?
All of this say one thing, that we are back where we were, at least in West Africa, in the 1980s and 70s and so on. We are back in the era of the Cold War, the era of proxy wars. What is happening in Niger, in Burkina Faso, in Mali and other Guinea-Bissau, and other countries where there's been coup lately, is nothing other than a manifestation of international politics that is affecting fragile states within Africa. You understand, And I think it all boils down to the role that France plays within Africa. France continues to, in my view, continues to see Africa as a sort of lifeline for itself. It just can't do without its African countries, So it doesn't want to let go in the way in which Britain, British, you understand what I'm saying, have all let go. What that means is that because France is part of the EU and other EU is the largest power, the third largest power, politically, economically and militarily in the world after the US and China. You understand, and of course you have the Russia there now. So any conflicts, between these powers, Russia, China, the United States, and then the European Union, is inevitably coming around here, the way you used to have it during the Cold War, when the giants did not engage each other directly, but were doing so through other proxies, just like you have in Ukraine now. So you have a situation where if somebody wanted to hurt France or hurt the EU or the West, all they needed to do is to come to Africa and see how they can displace France from within Africa. This, I think, is what is going on. And we have to have this understanding that the issues are rather more complex, and even not as simplistic as even some Nigerians are saying, and so on. For example, you look at within Niger Republic, there appears to be a sort of support for the coup. I don't know whether it is true
by the citizens
or no, by Nigerians, by Nigerians. Yeah, okay. The citizens of that country seem to support it. But more worrisome still, they have now found a way to single on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu out as the villain now to attack.
As the chairman of the ECOWAS.
Yes, as chairman of the ECOWAS. And the most interesting thing is how they have been able to separate him from Nigeria. So the attacks, the videos that I saw on social media, in which the Nigerian people are attacking not Nigeria, it is Tinubu personally.
Oh.
Rather than as president of Nigeria or as head of ECOWAS. That is to show that they still feel and understand the connections between they and here, between Nigeria, but then single out on head of state for attack because of the move which ECOWAS has made.
Okay, so but what are your thoughts on, there's actually a writer on the story here by the DHQ that said, military action as last option. Is there a need for that? How about, expelling the country when push comes to shove, expelling the country from the ECOWAS itself? Is there a need for any military action at all?
That's a good point, but I suppose the DHK, the defense headquarters were saying that in order to roll back from the government's initial position, of giving military ultimatums, that everyone come to find that this was rather hasty and ill-advised, and unguarded, So how do you roll back from that extreme position? You do so gradually. So that position by the defense headquarters is a way of softening, the initial mistake that the government had made. But people have to understand this. If it's we have a country of our own. If the push comes to the shove, and Nigeria has to go to war with any other country, so be it. Regardless of whether that country is a neighbor or not neighbor. The issue is, what are the reasons for going to war? And certainly on this occasion, there is not enough reason yet for going that line, you know? So it's not because they are a neighbor, they are this or that. If sometimes countries go to war with other countries just to unite the people at home. Just so that, you know, we will have a common purpose for once. You know, so this idea that Nigeria, that's not the issue. It's just that for this particular case, it is uncalled for. But if and when the need arises for Nigeria to do that against any other country, people have to understand that our own survival, our own interests will come first before any other considerations. Yeah.
Okay, just before we actually move on to other stories, there's actually fear in the north over max influx of refugees, you know, all due to, you know, the crisis. Are we actually seeing that? Is there, is that going to be the case?
Well, sometimes it's possible, it's probable.
Well, considering you actually said you're not seeing a pushback from the Nigerian citizens themselves, so...
It's probable, you know. Certainly we in the north here would have those fears, because when you had Boko Haram and bandits, you know, in Katsina as well as in the northeast, the places where people run to is Niger Republic. So there are many Nigerian refugees in that part. And people who live in these border towns, they don't really see the difference between one part, this country and that country. For them, the culture is the same. So many things are the same. So the influx is going to be like just going to another part where things are abundant. But then again, I don't see things getting that far now, because I think even within ECOWAS itself, there is the realization about how complex the situation is now, and how, you know, more or less military engagement has actually been taken off the table. In the end, like you mentioned, the Nigerian government, the new the general himself, has not even met with the delegation. So a diplomat, and what I read just before I came here, you know, was being reported was that they have actually even expelled the ambassadors of Nigeria, of the United States and France and some other countries, you know, and Togo also, out of Niger Republic, you know, just to show how far they are willing to go to succeed with this coup and so on. So perhaps maybe we too will have to come around and sit down and think more carefully and look at other ways of engaging this situation that may not necessarily be confrontational, that may not necessarily be direct, but at least what, or may even be, how do I put it, may be a sort of soft landing for what has happened. Because the problem with coups is that they don't really happen as suddenly as people think. Before somebody stages a coup, they would have bought, one way or the other, the support of many stakeholders within a country.
Of course.
So that when they overturn the more legitimate government, they will still be able to secure their position and the legitimacy, you know, at least in the eyes of a few stakeholders. Possibly, the new government has already done this, which is why I'm wondering what happened to Bazoum himself, that his intelligence agencies did not dictate, because certainly this will have been going on for a long time. This is not something, this has been in the long making, because for people to just come out of the streets and start supporting a coup in Niger just like that, I think maybe it's not something that started yesterday.
And this is the reason why most leaders actually demand loyalists in their cabinet. All right, so let's move on to more stories. Let's move on to the APC. It's their 10th anniversary. We had guests who actually spoke a lot about the APC. And, you know, the story on ground is that Ganduje has actually emerged APC chair. And then if you check out the Punch newspapers, it talks about other parties, PDP, Labour Party, mocking the APC, you know, for making Ganduje chair. And I asked this question earlier. Do you think he's actually a better fit for the chairmanship position of the party?
Well, first of all, I'm not APC, no PDP, right? So what I would say is, I don't know Ganduje personally. I don't think he's necessarily the best person for APC at this time, given the sort of wars and political wars and political battles that he had done when he was governor,
and also some charges
in Kano, and some of them unnecessary charges. All of them have those charges. So frankly, that's not too important per se.
Okay.
You know, but I also wonder whether the APC has had worse party chairman than the PDP had at one time. If you remember Bamanga Tukur, for example, who was chairman of probably the last PDP chairman before they lost election in 2015. He literally wrecked the ship of the APC. I mean, of the PDP when they were in power. He was picking quarrels and fights with virtually everybody, both internally as well as, you know, in the wider political arena. I hope that's not what the current APC chair, Ganduje, will turn out to be for the APC. But to go back to the 10-year anniversary that you say, the most important thing that the APC should be talking about right now is how far. You know, they've been in power. I mean, they've been in power 8 out of those 10 years. In opposition, 2 years. They were effective as an opposition party, and then they took power and then repeated again in 2019 and then now in 2023. I think this offers them an opportunity for sober reflection. In what ways have they really changed Nigeria or even touched Nigeria in way better than the PDP? I am not a spokesperson for the PDP, but I have written before that if the PDP were to take stock of their own achievements in power, they will have a lot more to say than the APC. And it's not because they had 16 years, because out of that 16 years, the APC have also had 8 years now.
Yeah.
You can do in 8 years in a virgin country like Nigeria, you can do in 8 years what someone else does in 20 years. You know, if you have, you know, what it takes to actually do it. So for me, what would the next 10 years look like for the APC? You know, in what ways do they want to affect Nigerians? You know, what sort of policies, you know, that will help to actually bring about real change to Nigeria, not change on paper of the sort we're now about to see, you know, or we're seeing now, but change of the sort that will really impact the lives of Nigerians, that will empower Nigerians, that will embellish the party and its ideas and its, you know, policies in the hearts of Nigerians.
Well,
you know, these are the issues that I think
talking about
they should
change
be more concerned
and
with.
you know, Nigerians, a lot of people have actually faulted them not bringing policies that would actually cushion the effect of the subsidy removal, you know, before actually removing the subsidy. And you know, we've also seen the NLC go on strike. Protests. That's on the 2nd of August. They had a protest, a national protest, and we're actually seeing the NLC threatening the government, you know, with a strike action on the 14th of August if they do not, you know, retract the contempt charges.
The truth is that the NLC is not serious. The TUC, they're not serious. The organized labor, they have really, really sold out Nigerians. When I say they have sold out Nigerians, I do not mean that they collected money, you know, and so on, in the way in which other people are alleging.
How so?
I don't know about that, and I don't really mean that at all. But they have sold out Nigeria in the sense that they have fallen short of the expectations of Nigerians, you know. The government may even be right with the subsidy policy. They may be right for not even having rolled out palliatives. They may be right for whatever, but opposition and protest, they are important for democracy. If for nothing else, but to get government to see how deeply some people, some Nigerians, and they're in millions, are hurting from these policies. So that government can have information that it needs to re-strategize, to see areas where it can actually, redress these policies. But the NLC has failed completely in doing that. They are just micromanaging Nigerians' expectations, And what I fear is that at some point, it will just lead to an all-comers kind of thing. You understand, where people will not wait for leadership of the labor again, and then they will begin to take law into their hands, and then will roll out into the streets, and then you have protests of the kinds that will turn into, we hope we don't want to see. Which is why it's important for the NLC, for the organized labor, to give Nigerians better representation, You can't, this thing has been on for like 2 months. The NLC itself doesn't seem to even know what it wants. Every day they say they are in negotiations with government. Every day, everyone knows for how long will that be. So if there is anyone that Nigerians should be focusing their attention on now, it is not just the government, but also the NLD, organized labor themselves. Because in my opinion, there is a vacuum in that aspect. It's very, very important for the political system to have an organized labor that is up and doing, that knows its job and is able to do it, and is able to genuinely hold the government accountable. This organized labor that we have, the current leadership of NLC, the current leadership of TUC, they failed Nigerians in that regard. It's been nearly 3 months, over 2 months. If you are going to have a strike, why not do it right from when the policy was introduced? Why not, if you are going to have negotiations with government, why not show some seriousness?
We actually talked about making harsh decisions, and I think they're trying to, avoid that. But, sadly, this is as much as actually we can take.
That's fine.
But thank you so much, Suleiman, for joining us and reviewing the papers with us this morning on Daybreak. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that was Suleiman, Chairman, Editorial Board, and also Deputy Editor-in-Chief. With that, we've come to the end of Daybreak on Trust TV. Thank you so much for staying tuned. We'll be back again tomorrow on Daybreak Extra, same time, same station. I remain Dash and Husseina Usman. Have a wonderful weekend.